Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sketchwave, our weekly show where we talk all things digital art because we are both digital artists here on YouTube, primarily in the Procreate space. My name is Joel, otherwise known as JoelCreate, and my co-host, as always, is the one and only James Julier. James, how have you been?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, quite a busy week. A lot of family stuff, a lot of organising. The plan is that I'm going to be moving in a few weeks. There's lots to organise.
Exciting.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a festival that we're going to as a family over the weekend as well. So I need to work in advance this week, which I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet. So I'm going to have to figure that out tomorrow or the day after. I did a tutorial I was quite happy with. I did a Hobbit style door.
I
Um,
saw.
yeah, I
Very
was
cool.
happy with that one, but now I'm completely out of ideas, so I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board literally and figure out what the
Well,
next thing will be. So
well, if you go back to our last episode, we talked about
exactly,
how
yes,
you can
yes,
conquer creative blocks. So
yeah,
there you
yeah.
go. Got your own resource.
How about yourself?
Yeah, good week. If I'm honest, I asked you the question, and I'm sat here thinking I can't remember what I've done in the last week. So it's just one of those weeks that just passes by and you just totally
Bit of a
forget.
blur. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to. Do you know what? I can't even remember what YouTube tutorial I put out this week. So there we go. But I've got a tutorial coming out tomorrow, which is one that I've been desperate to release. A fisherman by the lake. So I'm looking forward to that one
Yes.
going out, which was cool. I actually had a comment on this, which is something I would never have even thought about. But somebody mentioned that they wouldn't be drawing the fishermen because they were vegan, and do you know what? It's just something, just generally, it's just something I'd never even considered. Just something like that would affect someone's art that they would not want to do that type of thing, and
Right.
leave it to everybody about what they want to do. But yeah, it's just something I'd never considered
No,
before. But
hadn't
I'm look,
occurred to me. No, no.
no, I'm looking forward to it coming out though, so that would be cool. But yeah, it's weird. I can't even remember what came out last week on YouTube. Sell
I was going to say, yeah, it's the
simple
pastel
kind
colours.
of birds on the fence and a railing one.
Mhm.
What that type of tutorial takes me back to like when I first started doing YouTube, of like the simple, very you've got a color for your sort of foreground and then the
Mm.
midground and then the background and then a sky, and then they're just very simple, almost like paper cutout without the 3D effects to them, keeping it simple, um very much like silhouettes all the time, which is cool.
Yeah.
Talking about going back to sort of the beginning of YouTube, today we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a YouTuber and somewhat give advice to our listeners who are maybe thinking of doing YouTube as a side gig, or maybe even go full on in on it. Just, and also like a little bit of BTS of our processes and the journeys that we've had through YouTube. And again, just trying to give some advice to anybody starting that process. Now, James, you actually started now creating content as such in the Procreate space roughly around about 8 years ago now. What was
8 or 9. Yeah, yeah.
uh, what sort of point did you? Let's more start at the beginning. What was the reason that you wanted to start the channel?
Initially, it was just showing off. Just showing off. No, it was showing off my work that I was doing initially. It was just my personal work. It wasn't for the sake of tutorials. But that was before the iPad Pro came out and the Apple Pencil. And then once that came out, I just wanted to showcase the pencil a little bit as a video. And then that got lots of attention. And then it's like, okay, I've got an audience that want to know what's going to come next. So I was a high school teacher, so I thought if I then combine what I do as a teacher and what I do as an artist and make a tutorial, and it was mainly just a demonstration initially, just do some clouds or sky, and then it turned into more formal tutorials over time, really. Uh, but yeah, it was, and then it just seemed to catch the wind, so I carried on doing it. Really, it wasn't necessarily something I set out to do, but it kind of steered in that direction, and I realized that's what I was getting attention for on YouTube, which was great. I'm really appreciative and grateful that it happened. I mean, you probably have quite a different trajectory, can't say the word, trajectory than I have. So how was it for yourself?
Mine was a complete fluke. It was, my iPad was my COVID purchase. It was the end of 2020. It was literally New Year's, and I've been drawing up until that point on the iPad, but just for personal reasons, that's it. And I said to myself, I've got an idea where I could turn the final zero of 2020, which was, yeah, I drew the COVID kind of, the germ or the virus itself, should I say, as the zero, and then 2021 the one was the vaccine. And I thought, I've got a good idea. You see them all the time. It's just the most simple transition, isn't it? Where you've got your before and after, and you just go across the
Sure.
screen with your pencil and you reveal the one underneath. It did really well. And I was hooked at that point. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do it again tomorrow. I did it twice every day. Okay. This is doing really well. And before I knew it, I had a video go viral with like 3 million views. And I'm literally just making content just for a couple of TikToks at this point.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of people asking because the followers grew very quickly on TikTok. And then after that, it people started asking me, how do you do it? How can we draw along with this process? And so it very quickly, within 2 weeks, sort of completely snowballed.
Mm.
And then I was like, right, I'll make a YouTube channel. I made a YouTube channel, started making
So how
tutorials.
do you find the difference between TikTok and YouTube then? And what has been the fundamental difference for you, would you say?
Well, TikTok is more education. Sorry, YouTube's more educational for us, isn't
Yeah.
it? We have our commentaries on top of our videos, so we're trying to get people through the steps of a process. TikTok, you don't have to use any vocal. I think it's bizarre on TikTok. I feel like the more organic the video, the better it does. And I
Mm.
mean, like you can have your phone holding it over the top of the iPad while you're drawing, and a bit of camera shake, just and it doesn't need to be polished. But they're the ones that do really well for some reason. It's that
Yeah.
like real organic, unpolished
Bit
videos that
edgy.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, and I think a younger generation, like we had. I would say my generation with the Instagram, where it was like everything had to be polished. Your Instagram looked a
Mm.
certain way. It had to look really professional and really clean. Get rid of everything in the background. And now it's like the other generation, they're like really organic, and they're even taking photos on cameras that we had when we were kids, of like the compact cameras, putting the
Yeah.
flash on, and they love that type of photography. And I see it now and I'm like, yeah, they've got it actually better than what we had in a way, because their socials are a little bit cleaner. I've gone on a bit of tangent, but
No.
YouTube definitely more educational.
Mm.
You do need a little bit of polish on there. I think it goes a long way. um, to have certain parts of your videos look a certain way, whether it's visually and sound, which will come to equipment later. But YouTube
In term
definitely is a different
in
beast.
terms of the stability of YouTube, I think I personally have found, I mean, TikTok hasn't done a great deal for me. I've not invested a huge amount of time into it anyway. But I found YouTube way more predictable. You put the right amount of effort, you take the certain steps that you feel are going to benefit your channel, your tutorials, and you get a more or less predictable outcome out of it in terms of how it rates and the algorithm and the kind of views you get. How have you found that TikTok has been stable for you, or has it been all over the map?
uh, I hate TikTok. I hate TikTok at the
Yeah.
minute because it spiked so well, and I wondered where it was going, and it was done. It done, and then another video did well, and another one after that, three in total,
Mm.
and then it's just out of nowhere. The difference with YouTube is you subscribe to channels. It's then put in front of you on your home feed a lot of
Sure.
the time. My friend and I use YouTube very differently. I use the home page. He uses subscriptions page only. He never uses the home page, so he is
Mm.
only looking at content that he's subscribed to, which is good. But no one does that on TikTok. I don't think anybody ever goes from the For You page to um, the following tab. So they never
Mm.
see your content anymore unless it's doing really well. And my relationship with it is very much up and then straight back down. I
Yeah.
don't really post on there anymore. I just leave it. And you said about YouTube being a little bit different. YouTube's very much, I would say, a bit of a professional space. It's like a
Hmm.
space that we're all here taking it somewhat seriously. TikTok, you can make a quick and easy video, but when you're on YouTube, you've got a little bit of focus, haven't you? Of like, okay, I'm going to make a good video today. I'm going to really put my heart and soul into it, and I'm going to, make something fairly polished. It's a very different space. It's a huge base of creators, and the fact that you can actually make a living off of it as well in comparison to somewhere like TikTok. For anyone who doesn't know, by the way, there's the differences in the different platforms, which we will come to sort of monetization towards the end. TikTok has they had the creator fund and now they've got a different one, but it pays a fraction compared to YouTube in
Mm.
terms of views. And one thing that's very important to know on YouTube is different niches also have different levels of revenue for the ads that are paid on them. ours, I think mine typically runs in sort of the £10 to £12, I think, per 1,000 views or something like that. I can't remember what it is, but roughly that. That's a CPM. That's not an RPM. So it's not what you
Mm.
take home. YouTube take their cut of it after that. So it works out something like that. But just as a vague example, if you did anything in finance and you're thinking of doing something in finance, but you have to have certain criteria to do financial advice. um, that pays big money. That pays like 60 to £80 per 1,000 views. It's big money over there. So there's different niches on YouTube that will pay very
Sure.
differently. I hear a lot that gaming doesn't do particularly well on YouTube unless you are someone who like streams, for example, or you've got quite a
Mm.
big following compared to different niches as well. So you've got to imagine that there's a company that want to put ads in front of a certain video, and that if they're in a certain space, they'll have more budget for those adverts, and if they don't, then you'll get a generic advert in front. There's a
Mm.
lot to it, but yeah, that's something to note, that if you are thinking of doing YouTube, there are different sort of pockets of
Definitely.
monetization, and different areas of it.
There's quite a high
It-
threshold as well for videos now, isn't there? You need, I mean, we know because we've started this different channel from our main channel. You need 1,000 subscribers to monetize. You need, is it 4,000 watch hours
Mhm.
across all your videos within the 12 months in order to monetize as well. So it's quite a high bar, really, isn't it, for a lot of beginners? That really, we're fortunate in the we're in the position where we have an audience and we can port some of that interest across onto our new projects. But when you're starting out from the very beginning, that's quite a daunting prospect, I think. I know when I first started, it was there for months and months, and maybe I had 50 subscribers initially for quite a long period of time. Um, the first review I did of the iPad Pro, that changed. That went straight, kind of vertical almost. But unless you have something that catches a popular wave, it's quite tricky to, you just have to ratchet it up, don't you, over a longer period of time, really. And that requires a lot of dedication, week in, week out, I think, for a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's one thing we've got written down here, is just the dedication and the obsession.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
becoming doing YouTube becomes part of your life. Like
Mm.
we this would nicely tie into our sort of processes, but we have very different sort of processes as well as output necessarily as well. Because yours is on a weekly, yours would be your tutorial and then the extended version on your Patreon,
Yeah.
as well as, of course, this show that we do on a Tuesday as
Hmm.
well. So, and then on mine, I've tried to add a few pieces of content along the way now. The Doodle channel, the Sketch Wave,
You're
my
very
second
busy.
channel, Joel
Yeah.
Designs, JoelCreate, Patreon. You know, it becomes an obsession, and it's
Mm.
something that you want to be doing as much as you can, but you tiptoe very carefully over a line that says, I'm burnt out, or I'm taking time away from family. I mean, that's a really great
Yeah.
question, is how do you find the balance between content creation and family? Because they do say that if you, the best creators, the ones typically a lot of the time are the ones that somewhat have a very understanding partner, someone who is backs you all the way, and they
Mm.
understanding are aware of the requirements at times to do your job and make the content and the time it takes away from you, your family as well.
Mm.
Would you, is that something you agree with?
Definitely, you need to have your full support of your other half or whoever you live with. Um, and I've got children. I need to be able to find the right balance with my output. I'm very, as you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, that's right for me. I'm very tentative in terms of adding too much more to my workload. Um, what with school pickups and drop offs and all the kind of family requirements, I I try to make it easy enough for me to commit to those, because there was a time earlier on in the YouTube channel where I was a full-time teacher, and then I'd do the tutorials at the weekends. So that again required patience from my partner. And then, you know, over time now this has become my full-time thing. I never used to do a tutorial every week. It used to be once a fortnight, every 3 weeks. And I realized that that's not the output pace that I could really get by with in the long term. It needed to up the pace really to compete in a sense. Um, so now that I do it full time, I do commit to doing one a week and an extended one a week, and now this podcast. Um, but I'm very reluctant to add too much more to that in case I just get to the point where the quality or my energy or my enthusiasm, whatever those things are, just starts to dwindle. I need to make sure that I can do this for 10 years and not just 10 months and then have a nervous breakdown. you know and it has to be something that you enjoy. Like you say, we start this because it's a passion. um and it is a curse sometimes to be successful in the things you enjoy if it just becomes then a job, and you lose the joy of it. And I think that we do start this because we have a passion and a joy for it. And I want to make sure it stays that way as a long term project. So I do it because I'm interested. I do it also because it pays the bills now. I'm fortunate that the channel and Patreon combined do actually enable me to now do it full time. Um, but more importantly than that, it needs to be not something I hate in the end, because as soon as that has that energy where you resent it and you're dreading it, I think that, that everyone's going to somehow or other, it's going to leak out and people are going to pick up on that vibe, whether it's the quality that goes down or whether you just get a bit slapdash with the upload timescale or whatever it is. It's going to come out somewhere in your workload. People are going to start to sense that your heart's not in it as much. So I want always to feel like I'm pushing it forward and getting better, and the tutorials are becoming more advanced, higher quality, whatever that is. And for that, I need to make sure I'm not overburdened.
Yeah, you got to keep it fun, haven't you, as well? Like
Yeah.
if that's what this is. This is one of the notes I got written here. What it's like to be a YouTuber. It's so fun. The
Mm.
different types of videos you can make, and it's a creative output alongside us, which is really cool because we get. For me, I get like a double creative output from it. We get to create our tutorials, and I get to create other types of videos, but I'm also creating
Sure.
videos when I'm making just tutorials. It's just it's such a fun thing to do. Let's get into that process a little bit of
Mm.
creating tutorials, because people always ask me, you know, what does it look like? What does a typical journey look like in our videos? Now, for anyone who's watching who maybe isn't aware of what we do, we both make weekly tutorials on YouTube using the app Procreate, where we guide someone through a design from start to finish, provide palettes, etc., and brushes to guide a user through that process. So we have different processes. So I'll roll with mine first, and then we can see the differences, because I
Hmm.
think it's fascinating, the differences anyway. Because I think that's also something that other people should be aware when making YouTube, that or making videos on YouTube. There's no singular path to this. You can do it
No.
any way you want. So for me, for example, it's a Tuesday now. I was sat on the sofa last night and I was scrolling through some photography, and I found a beautiful cottage that had a beautiful garden out front, and I was inspired by that straight away. I had to get my iPad. Just put my phone beside my iPad and I just started drawing. This is like 8 o'clock at night. You're just carrying on. You maybe got football on in the background, and that's typically a lot of the time how organically it will start. I'll just see something that inspires me. I go, I want to draw something like that, because I can see it, and then I start to see the brushes involved. I can say, okay, I've got some ideas for colors now, and put the palette together, and just start drawing. And then my process is that I will draw it, and most of the time, as I'm drawing it, I'll take screenshots. So that's how
Mm.
I go about doing it, where I'll remember the brush, or I'll remember the size or the color. And if you screenshot and then grab your Apple Pencil, you can annotate it as well. So I can put little notes down to say, this is the base color for this area. This is the brush I used. Make sure to do this, or, little things like that. And then I will go ahead and share all of those screenshots to my Mac. I'll get down here in the studio, as I like to call it, and then get to work on drawing it again. But sometimes, if I felt the first time I'd gone down too many different avenues to get to the finished result, I'll draw it again. So that's the second time I'll draw it, and then I'll record it. So sometimes the final video that you see, I drew that same design twice before, whether it's
Mm.
just me needing to remember the processes involved or how I got to that end point. But most of the time, it's typically the first one, and then the second time I draw it is when I actually record it. You're a little bit more sort of off the cuff, aren't you? But which I think is a wonderful skill in its own, though, to be able to do that.
I think the years as a high school teacher where I've had to just wing it a little bit, and you go in with a plan, but then you never know quite what you're going to have to teach and explain live in person, and you just have to respond in the moment. And I am very much a leave things till last moment person anyway, and so it favors me just to go in fresh. And I've tried to do it, and I have done it. Um, a bit more in advance, and I have done it similar in to the way that you work. But for me, I find that I'm forever trying to replicate what I did the first time. If I've already done it, I'm trying to remember too much how it worked last time. Because if it has worked, I'm trying to recreate that, and then I'm struggling to remember exactly what I did, and then that becomes my stumbling block. Whereas if I'm doing it for the first time on my tutorial as I record it, and I do have a a general, excuse me, I do have a general sense of what I'm heading towards, and I will have created a palette, and I will have figured out what brushes I'm going to use, and I usually have a couple of references and that kind of thing. So I know where I'm going with it, but in terms of executing it is the first time in front of camera, and that does sometimes involve a lot of editing out the mistakes and backtracking, and it can end up as a 2.5, 3 hour film that I've had to do and then edit it down to about an hour-ish. Um, but yeah, I do think I'm a bit more fresh when I come at it for the first time, and I may look back at it later and think, oh yeah, I would have done this different, but then I hold that back for another tutorial, and it works out for me. And over the period of years, I've kind of found certain formulas, certain ways of doing things that I know just now because I've done it enough times that it's going to go X, Y, and Z, and I kind of know where I'm going with it really. Um,
Hmm.
but it takes a lot for me that I don't think that would have worked initially. But I think that it's become more and more something that I just improvise as I'm doing it. Um,
I
but
don't
it
think I
comes with
could ever
it
do
comes
it
with
the way
risk.
you do it. I
Yeah.
could never do it. I'd be going in there feeling blindsided and not know what to do. Although I do say that there's only ever been one tutorial where I was just going to make something and record it, and it did very well. It's like one of my top 10 most viewed videos, and I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, I just did that off the cuff. It's a skill in its own to be able to do that with a level of confidence that you just think, yeah, I can go straight into this and I know exactly what I'm doing. I feel comfortable what I'm doing and I know how to achieve what I want to achieve while still giving off that professional vibe on camera that says
Yeah.
this guy knows what he's doing. There isn't a
It's a
single bit of
lie.
somebody watching that. Yes. It's just like one of those things where like you're watching it and you go, you just never know, it's just one of those things where it's like a cloak almost, isn't it?
Oh yeah, a lot of
And then there's
times
the
I'm feeling like this. A lot of it is internal voices with art. I think that sometimes you have an encouraging voice and think, yeah, this is fantastic and it's going really well. And sometimes I'm mid tutorial and I'm thinking, this is terrible. This is going to fail. This is one of the worst tutorials you've ever done. It's looking shocking. And, and, and then they do really well as a video. So you can't always know. Some of the things that I felt the least confident in have done poorly, or sorry, done really well. And then things I've been really happy with. And then it's just fallen flat. So it's so strange, isn't it? It's very, very
yeah.
difficult to predict, and I think that's something that people need to know about YouTube, is that there is a certain unpredictable. I know it's contradicting what I was saying earlier, but you have a general ballpark, and you can predict it to a point. But even within that range, there could be quite a big variation between what does well and what can just take off. You
Yeah,
can't always
absolutely.
know how well something will do exactly.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. And you said about my process of, how there's so many times you said about me chasing, if you did it the way I did it, you'd be chasing that
mm,
first version. I have developed an unbelievable skill of just letting go. There's so many times where I will draw it the second time and I'll just be looking up here at my other monitor. I've got all of my screenshots and I'll be looking at it and go, it just doesn't look as good as that one, or that's what I
mm,
want it to look like. And I have to just walk away because what do? Do you just bin a recording that took you 2 hours, maybe up to 2 hours, maybe to record? You can't do that. It's not efficient. And I have always had to tell myself the person viewing never knew that that version existed. So
no.
I can just carry on knowing that it achieves the same result. But yes, there could have been a tweak here or a tweak there to make it look better. But that's the beauty of the fact that we could do that after the tutorials
Mm.
ended, but sadly, while you're recording, you can't. Afterwards, oh yeah, no worries, I'll just move that tree slightly across. There's room for editing afterwards, especially if you're a viewer. You can go, actually, no, I do think that tree could move across, and you've got the luxury of doing that. Sadly, once the camera starts recording and it stops, that's it.
And
That's
it's
one of
funny
the
what you were saying in terms of your when you produce yours. You do yours on a Tuesday, you were saying often, and when do you upload it?
it fluctuates.
It
It
fluctuates.
fluctuates all the time because again, our processes are different. That I'll
Mm.
upload a YouTube tutorial on, so I'll maybe have it recorded and edited on my computer, ready to go. But so the Friday before it comes out, I'll render it, I'll upload it, and then when it's on YouTube, I will then give it to Patreon as early access on the
Yeah.
Monday, ready for it to fully come out to the public on the Thursday. But that's a YouTube video. That's not to mention then the other videos I get done during the week of like just making a Patreon exclusive tutorial and uploading that to Patreon, and it's uploaded straight away. I don't leave it
Yeah.
on the computer. It's just uploaded straight away. It's in the bank and it's ready to go. Because that's another thing that our processes are different. My Patreon, I think at one point the best I got ahead was maybe 9 videos. So if I release
I
three a
can't
month
even
over there,
imagine.
I'm 3 months ahead
I
because I
can't
just want to.
imagine.
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
this is the crazy thing with YouTube. There's so many different ways of doing it. Some people do it straight off the cuff, every day,
Mm.
record something, chuck it up. I can't work like that because of the fear and the stress and the weight on my shoulder. I'm not really someone, to be honest, who gets like anxiety or anything like that. But the thought of just leaving it and then maybe that day something popping up and not being able to, you know,
Do you know,
drives me a bit
I,
mad.
I upload my videos on a Sunday, and often I'm recording them on the Sunday morning, and that sounds so unprofessional. And I'm
I
sorry,
don't know
everyone, if
how you
that's
do
really,
it.
I don't know how I do it, but I thrive, I think, a little bit off that anxiety and that pressure. The need to do it is the thing I need to do it.
Mm.
Um, so I think without that, I mean, I've always procrastinated like crazy in my life, and so the deadline looming upon me is what I need. I mean, it's classic kind of ADHD, but I do really need that deadline and the fear of not realizing the goal in order for me to get started. I can put it off and put it off and put it off, and then it's that last minute fear that I need, and then I'll get it done. I don't know. I don't like it,
That's
but
it.
it's what I'm stuck
That's
with.
one of the
So,
most important things, though, isn't it? Is setting a routine. A routine on
mm,
YouTube is so important. Setting a day of the week that you need to be uploaded or the video needs to be going live anyway, and that your audience can expect your content. If I didn't see a James Julier video on a Sunday, something's wrong because every
mm,
Sunday you should see a James Julier tutorial come up, and everybody has their days, different times, and so on, but setting a schedule is so important for your
it's
audience
true.
and for you. It also gives you a bit of accountability. YouTube is it can be a very serious thing. I've said from the start, if I treat this like a full-time job, it will be
Mm,
a full-time job, whether that's backed by monetization, over time and stuff like that. And it for me, it really is a full-time job,
yeah.
with all the stuff. But I want that. I want to fill up my schedule to make sure I'm creating content. One that I just love doing it. If I didn't, I'd stop. I said this in a previous
Mm,
episode. I got burnt out. I'd just stop the other ones and just focus on the main ones. But having accountability, for me again, I have external accountability and sort of requirements, which is my Patreon. My Patreon
mm,
has a requirement that I give early access to tutorials, and that is something that then I am held accountable that I need to make sure on the Monday it goes live. A Patreon is although you have those requirements of your community most of the time, the people that back you on those platforms such as Patreon or any other sort of membership platform, those are your core audience. They're the people that are going to
sure.
be okay if you are a day late, or they'll understand if you're ill or anything
Mm,
like that. Those people will back you no matter what. So sometimes you can not say get away, that's the wrong word probably, but you have availability to, if it's a tiny bit later than you expect, they'll totally
mm,
understand. But YouTube is different. For example, the
yeah.
Sidemen. If the Sidemen didn't upload a video on a Sunday, no one would know what to do because they are synonymous with Sidemen Sunday, it's always there for people to watch. And if they didn't, their
Mm.
fans would be upset. And that's the same with
Yeah,
you. I don't think a lot of people realize that your audience, they're your fans. They want to see your content. They are. Some people will sit and wait for it. It's their
it's
content
true.
on a Friday night, Saturday morning, whatever it may
Yeah,
be, and they integrate your content into their routine. It really
yeah,
does become part of someone's weekend or evening, whatever it may be, and they enjoy that. So I think thinking beyond just the fact that you need to release a video at 4 o'clock on a Sunday,
yeah.
it's more than that. It's not just that, it's making sure your audience can actually consume your content or follow along with you or whatever it is. And again, that dedication that we spoke about, making sure you're dedicated to the rules that you put in place for your channel, the content, and making sure you're showing up week in, week out.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, plans change. I mean, illnesses can happen, and it would be good if I had some done in advance. That's true. But aside from illness, I've always maintained the weekly output. I have done for the last 2 or 3 years anyway. And even if you're going to go on holiday, then you have to make sure that you've factored that in and you've done some in advance, and you're not going to miss those release days. It is crucial. People do invest in you, in us. Um, and it's important that you honour that, like you say. People have a plan, don't they? For me, it's Sunday morning in America. People tune in and they're expecting their tutorial to be there waiting for them at a certain time on that day, aren't they? And
Yep,
I don't like the idea of
absolutely.
disappointing people. I think that I am motivated by the wish not to disappoint people. I think I worry about these things. If I know that people have an expectation of me and I've failed to meet that, then that is something that sticks with me. So, you know, as well as the joy, you need to, like you say, take it seriously. You have to be aware that if people have gone to the effort to subscribe, to watch your content, to be actively waiting there for you, you need to commit to that, and honor that. I think it is crucial. It is important. Um, and it's something I've got better at over the years. I realize more and more. I mean, my upload days used to vary a little bit in the early days, but I think once I realized, I honed into the Sunday, that it needs to be a commitment to you then, and yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think the other thing that we need to talk about then is the process then after the shooting, because it's also
Mm,
there's so much more time that goes into it as well of the editing. We've said multiple times, I've said hundreds of times, the video that you see on YouTube is not the final result. The amount of times we might swear at ourselves or get frustrated and cut it out or even do a whole part of a design again. And
mm,
that'll be the same. I don't think people understand sometimes the duration that goes into a small video on its own. I made a 3 minute video. It was the chat GPT video. The video is like 3.5 minutes long. It
yeah.
took me a whole day to make. The editing, the reshoots and stuff like that. That's another
Mm,
factor is reshoots. If you're somebody who does like headshot, talking to camera as well as B-roll, that takes so long. You've got to
yeah.
you've got to make a script. You've got to talk to camera. The amount of times I'll talk to camera and I'll say the line over and over and over again because I just don't like it. We do it with the start of this show. I do the intro to this show. The amount of times I have to do the intro over and over. Today was a one shot, and you can take my word for it. I
You
promise.
did very
But
well today.
thank you, thank you, appreciate it. But most weeks it's one or two times, maybe three times, and you get frustrated. But that's what happens when you do like head cam shots as well for your videos. You will just
Just a
repeat
heads
lines
up.
over and over.
If in future episodes it looks like I'm laughing a little bit at the beginning, you'll know why.
Yeah, yeah. It's always I have to wait until you just sort of come back down a little bit, and then I'll start recording again. But yeah, the reshoots as well is something that's so interesting, and the time it takes. Again, a 3 minute video took me all day to make.
Yeah.
It's mad sometimes how long it can take, and then it's not just that's not the end of the journey. There's publishing that goes into that as well. Uploading it onto YouTube, giving it they call it packaging. Giving it the correct thumbnail, giving it a good title. And sometimes we get stuck in our ways a little bit. I think in our space, but in lots of other spaces, depending on the types of video, the thumbnails can vary wildly.
Mm,
For us, because we do a tutorial and a finished design every week, our thumbnails tend to look very similar, like week in, week out on our own channels. Whereas now you can do
yeah.
A/B testing as well, so you can upload multiple variations of a thumbnail, so you can
Hmm.
upload completely different concepts and just see how they work. So that then requires like if you're somebody who's skilled in Photoshop or even just do them in Procreate, that's part of the process as well.
Mm.
creating those cheesy faces that you got to make sometimes for thumbnails if that's the type of videos you make. And then also, again, the titles, the captions, all of that is so important. But the time then of after your video is made, you got to design that thumbnail, maybe one or
Yeah,
two, or even three now to upload. That takes time. Not just that, the content then you've got to make for social media on top of that. We said about TikTok right at the very beginning. I typically speed up my videos because ours are very much like a time lapse, very orientated type
sure.
of
Yeah,
media, aren't they? Where we can show a blank canvas and show the finished canvas kind of thing. But for other people, if you make headshot shot
mm.
videos, you've got to chop up a 10-minute video to 90 seconds. That's a skill in its own. And if you're someone who just focuses on short form, which by the way is a whole nother conversation, do you just go down short form? Do you do long form videos like we do, or do you do both? I will I will tell you now, they are both skills in their own. To make a
Of
90
course.
second
Yeah.
video or even a minute video on some of the limitations on some platforms, that is very tough to tell a story in
Mm.
60 seconds, a
Sure.
whole video's worth, and get the content moving quick enough, get the engagement. People who sit down for a 10-minute video are more likely not to need that fast paced content, but you 90
It's
seconds,
true.
it's got to be frame after frame.
And what we do is, I guess, is fairly straightforward too, isn't it? Because certainly with me, I just have my camera set up and it just points at my iPad and it doesn't do anything else really. I've got a few transitions now and other things I'm throwing at it, but basically, it's just the camera pointing at the iPad and just observing what I'm doing as I talk. Um, Compared to many other YouTubers, my format certainly, I know you do a lot more talking to camera across your channel and other channels too than I ever do. In fact, this is the only instance where I've actually been speaking to camera. I don't do that at all on my main channel. But yeah, I think fundamentally we have it fairly easy in that sense. We just have a camera
Yeah.
pointing down, don't we, looking at what we're doing on screen. I mean, has that evolved for you? Has your setup changed radically over the?
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
changed based on what I want to do.
Mm.
Live streaming was a big thing for me at the beginning for community. By the way, that's another whole another topic to talk about. But live streaming, it's great for community building. But my live streams at the beginning, equipment wise, was exactly the same as my very start tutorials. A top down shot with my phone, and that was it. A
Mm.
microphone still to talk into because I bought the mic fairly early. And it's just a Blue Yeti microphone. We've actually both got the same mic now, haven't we?
We do now,
Because
yeah.
you've been
You
using a
shamed me.
different type of mic for a while.
My audio sounded absolutely awful in the first couple of videos here, and probably in my main channel as well. I managed to get away with it, probably not in the post, the editing bit. Um, but yeah, now I think it's so much better. I think the sound of a video goes a long way, doesn't it? I think it's,
Yeah.
you can have a low resolution, but if it sounds terrible, then you just don't want to engage with it any longer. So I found
So
it's helped.
let's talk about equipment then, because
Mm.
again, I at the beginning had just a top down shot of my phone, using my phone, which was just an iPhone. I think it was 11 Pro Max at the time. Now it's a 14 Pro Max, but I
Hmm.
don't use it for the top down shots anymore. You use your phone still, don't you, for the videos?
I
Which
do.
I think is really important to discuss.
Mm. I think, yeah, I think it's important to know that you don't necessarily need professional grade equipment. I mean, um, I, I, I really enjoy keeping things at a minimal as necessary in terms of the number of devices. So I've used my phone and I use my iPad, and that is it. So I film with my phone and I edit and use LumaFusion. I don't use iMovie, I use LumaFusion on the iPad to edit it. And I really like the simplicity of that. And I think that the iPhone camera is pretty good. I think it's more dependent on the lighting and getting the setup right and just positioning the lights in such a way that it doesn't shine for me off the screen. Um, but yeah, the sound now carries it so much better.
So
But
you
I'm
feed
really
your
happy with
mic,
them.
don't you, into your phone? Sorry.
I do, yes. It's just, I mean, it used to be I had a little lapel, which is dodgy as anything. I do, in fact, have it here, excuse me, which is falling apart. I mean, it was, 100 quid or something when I bought it, but it's falling apart here now. So I would have that fastened to me initially. Um, Which, it was acceptable. It at least picks my voice up. It was better than just recording off the iPhone microphone. I think if I was still using the iPhone microphone, then the quality would have been appalling. But that managed to get me through to a certain extent. But it's definitely improved now that I'm using the Blue Yeti. I think that it's much better.
Yeah, your equipment can grow over time, can't it? And it
Mm,
at multiple paces. I'm personally someone who loves technology. I quite like
mm,
being able to have a. If there's a problem, I can try and is there a gadget or something I can try and use to try and
yeah.
fix it or make life a bit easier with these processes of this. It's slowed down a lot recently. I'd say in the last year since I got my camera, that's pretty much been the last thing I bought for
Mm,
setup wise. I think it's just eventually you end up going, I've got everything. And you kind of have to ask yourself, if I spend a certain amount on a piece of equipment, does it make my videos then £1,000 better or $1,000 better?
no.
You know, but and then there's a little bit of a back and forth there of saying, but is my equipment now any good and does it still, qualify? You know,
Mm,
but you can go such a long way with your phone. I use my phone for so many shots in my videos and my face cam videos and everything like that. Like I
yeah.
use my phone because my camera will otherwise be busy doing other things.
The only issue I think that I have still with my iPhone is that if I don't lock the kind of the contrast of the color or whatever it is, then it fluctuates. So you have to lock it on screen. So it's the autofocus will be all over the place. And also the colors will be all over the place. That happened a few times. But what I do find now is because I've locked it at the beginning, it won't change. It won't look different as I go throughout. But it does mean that the colors don't 100% look accurate to how they actually look.
Mhm.
And I'm forever and maybe you do as well, but I'm forever getting comments of people saying the colors looks more vibrant on my video than it does on their tablet. Do you get that? Do you find that people still?
Very rarely. I mean, you get a lot
Right,
more
I get
views
it.
than I do, so it's probably magnified to be honest. So it's, but very rarely. But I don't know. I think I had it more with my phone than I did my camera. I will say that
Yeah.
though. I think with I used to. So, just want to touch on one point there. You said about locking the
Hmm.
autofocus, locking the white balance, etc. Are you using the default app or are you using an additional app for
I'm
this
using the
type of
default.
sort of
Maybe that's where I'm going
advanced?
wrong here. Yeah.
So there's an app on the App Store when I used to use my phone. It's called ProCam. I think it's about
Hmm.
£5, maybe £5 to £10, something like that. But it gives you way more features to lock certain features of the
Right.
camera while recording. And that for me, and I'm kind of talking more towards like the people who are maybe going to start making content with their phone. If you want to just utilize your camera a little bit more and tweak a few of the settings more manually, download something like a ProCam. You'll be able to lock those types of things in a bit more and really maximize the most out of
Mm.
your camera because your phone camera can go such a long way. And by the way, it doesn't need to be a latest model either. There are so many people that make stunning videos on TikTok
Yeah.
or Instagram, especially on like reels or something like that. They'll make amazing videos using just their phone,
Yeah.
and I'm envious of their filmmaking capabilities just using equipment that's in your pocket. But equipment is definitely something that builds up over time, and
Sure.
you should never look at people's setups on YouTube and go, right, well, I need two monitors, I need a this, that, and the other, because my setup has changed dramatically over time.
Mm.
It literally just used to be a Mac Mini and one monitor. Now, I changed from a Mac Mini to a laptop because I wanted the portability while editing, so I could edit everywhere. And then an extra one now for our displays here of us two, and then I've got another one above, which is the preview of my camera, which you're also
Mm.
seeing as well. So I've got myself like almost three times in front of me now. But these are solutions that I wanted to fix because, for example, the camera, the small little screen that it has on it, it was really hard to tell if it was in focus in the right area. So rather
Sure.
than look at the tiny screen, it runs out to a 28-inch monitor up top, so I can just triple check everything's in
Yeah,
focus as
that's
I
good.
go,
Yeah.
make sure colors are correct and everything. Because there's nothing worse than throwing away content. That upsets me to my core of having to
Mm.
throw something away because you weren't quite happy with it or the sound. Luckily, sound these days you can fix. If you are someone who is maybe thinking about your sound, you can go to Adobe Podcast and upload a
Mm.
audio file and you get a percentage bar from 0 to 100 of being able to apply their podcast filter. It will make your sound beautiful. If you are someone
Yeah.
who's struggling with audio, please try and check out Adobe Podcast. It will help you out a bunch. And it's very quick to
It's
do. It's also
limited.
completely free.
It's limited to a certain file size. So if you've got a really long video audio, then it may
Mhm.
reject it after I think I can't remember how many megabytes or whatever it was.
Gotcha.
I think it's maybe 100 megabytes or something like that. Um, but yeah, no, I've used it a few times on videos. Before I got an upgrade of microphone, it saved the audio a couple of times, definitely.
And you mentioned LumaFusion.
Mm,
LumaFusion is a fantastic editing program. I can't remember how much it is. I think it's about £30. Is that right? So something like about $30 to $40.
maybe a bit less. It might. I can't remember. I've had it a little while now. It might have been 20, 25. I can't remember. But not. I mean,
Well,
if you're going to use it a lot, I mean, if you're just thinking, well, I might do
oh
it,
yeah,
and then it can seem like a big investment. But if you know that you are going to have a schedule of editing to do, then actually it's pretty good value.
yeah.
I don't know what iMovie costs. The iMovie Pro.
Well, the best thing though about that LumaFusion license is once you buy it on the App Store, you can download it on your iPad, you can download it on
Yeah.
your Mac, you can download it on your phone. You can edit in a proper full suite
Yes.
of editing tools on your phone using
Mm-hmm.
LumaFusion. If you don't want to
Mm.
spend that type of money, there's other apps such as like CapCut. CapCut is fantastic. I love CapCut for all sorts of like headshot camera videos. I use DaVinci Resolve for my tutorials, but CapCut for um, videos in that different nature. You know, typical kind of
Mm.
YouTube videos where you got a mix of A roll, so your face, and B roll, and I could just use different filters and effects on there that I can't seem to get the same result in DaVinci Resolve, which by
Mm.
the way is also completely free if you want to download it for your Mac or your Windows machine. That's a fantastic piece of software. It's a professional grade piece of software, but you get all of the basics and more for completely free. And if you want to upgrade to more cinematic tools, you can do for like a one-off fee. Um,
Yeah.
at the minute, my advice would be to avoid any Adobe programs simply because they just seem to not really care about their user base. There's loads of stuff happening in the news. We haven't really covered it because it doesn't really affect our audience, but cancellation fees and having to pay a
Mm.
large sum up front, those types of things. Avoid
Yeah.
Adobe because there are much better free alternatives out there. Yes, their software is fantastic. I use Photoshop every day for work, um, but there are free alternatives absolutely everywhere.
Sure.
Um, that's also another thing probably to touch on, which some people may or may not know. You mentioned, for example, this is your full time gig. For me, I do this
Mhm.
full time alongside my full time job as well. So there's a balance of trying to work out staying alive and making sure you actually have time for yourself, but also doing jobs. Luckily with my job, for example, I can move my hours flexible, how I need to. So I just start work very early in the day, and then I'll finish around sort of 2 o'clock, and then from 2 o'clock onwards I can get content recorded and edited,
Mm.
uploaded as quickly as possible, and hopefully repeat the next day. But sometimes editing carries on, and there are nights where you as a creator, same as me, where I'm editing in bed till midnight. Most of the time when we finish this show, it's
Mm.
usually around about 9, half 9. I'm editing it up until midnight, uploading it as quickly as can. Most nights, if it decides to play ball, but there's a certain level of commitment that you need, don't you, as a
Mm.
YouTuber to get the job done, and the sacrifices involved to get content done. And there will be people in your life when you first start doing it that go, "Oh, really? You don't want to?" I don't know. Let's say, I can probably go back to a period where my friends would be saying to me, "Oh no, you're going to come on Call of Duty tonight," and I'll be like, "Nah, guys, I can't. I've got to edit this video." They'd be like, "Oh, that's all right. I can wait till
Yeah.
tomorrow." Those conversations don't happen anymore because
Mm.
as time goes on, they see the seriousness of it. They see how much it means to you. They see how much
Yeah.
it changed you, maybe even, and your drive in doing it. And it will become part of your life that people accept. At the beginning, it's very daunting, isn't it? I would
Mm.
imagine for most people to do those types of videos and not feel silly on the internet. What did you feel like when you first put out some videos? Because that's quite a long time ago now.
Yeah. I mean, how did I feel about it? I mean, I was a high school teacher at the time. I kind of buzzed off it a little bit because it gives you such kudos in the classroom with teenagers who, sir, wow, your video, it's doing blah blah blah, and so that was good. In terms of friends and family, well, like you say, it was an additional thing to the teaching. Um, so I don't know how, if I'd suggested at that time that I was going to give up teaching and take it seriously, then there's no way that people would have taken that as a sensible thing to, and it wouldn't have been a sensible thing to do. It was only at the point where the the income was almost on a par with teaching that it became a viable option. Um, but yeah, I think people now understand that it's what I do, and take it a lot more seriously. And you have to make certain sacrifices. And going back to the editing, the filming is only a small part of the equation, isn't it? The editing takes way longer. If you got, say, if you do a video that's 50 minutes to an hour long, well, it's probably taken 4 or 5 hours of editing. Although it may not seem like it, and people might not understand where that time's gone. Just simply going through and removing mistakes and cutting out the gaps in your constant chatter and these kind of things. It just takes so much time. Um, and yeah, I just had to sit in many social situations where I've made the commitment. I'm gonna go and go away with friends and things like that. But then I'm sat there on my iPad and I'm editing and for hours and hours and hours and hours. And people just leave you in the corner of the room sometimes as you're getting on with it. But you do, if you're committed to do it, you can't just not do it. It's such an important thing. I think when you have a channel and large following, then you just have to get on with it, don't you? And I'm not complaining. It's a great thing. It's a real luxury. It's a real great thing to be able to do.
It's
But yeah,
amazing that you can be
yeah,
rewarded so much for something you simply love
mm,
doing.
yeah,
I think about your position quite a lot, if I'm honest. Matt, we talk quite a lot in what we do about content creation and stuff, and I find it. I just think it's amazing that for you, and it's something I strive to get to. You're at a point where you're rewarded for doing this type of content enough that it's your income, the time that you put in one is being rewarded, and you can keep going. It's not like you hit a cap. You can keep going.
no,
You could maybe put out more videos, different types of content. you know the ceiling can get higher for you, which I
mm,
think is amazing. I just think we live in a content creator economy at the minute, where there are creators in every niche on YouTube that can make a living, and you can too, but it takes a long time.
mm,
I've got notes here, and I've explained this to a friend in exactly these words. Being a YouTuber is like running a marathon that doesn't have a finish line. You just have to keep running. You have to keep going. You have to keep your commitment up and your dedication to it. But there is no finish line. You can hit 10,000 subscribers, or let's go back a level. You can hit 1,000 subscribers and the watch time, and then boom, you're monetized on YouTube. That's not when you retire. That's not when the checks come in. That's not when
it's when the work
you
really
kick your feet
begins,
up
isn't
and
it?
pack.
Yeah,
That's exactly when the work begins.
mm,
You put your head down at that point, and you really work. I'm doing this now 3.5 years. You're doing this 8 years. You know, the time it requires to get to those points, it takes a long time. And like I said about it never having a finish line, you hit 10,000 subscribers, nothing happens. You hit 50,000 subscribers,
mm.
nothing happens. You hit 100K. Yes, you get the plaque that's up behind you on the wall, and it's a fantastic. I can't imagine it's like a bit of, reward for you. But
It did. It
nothing
was. Yeah,
changes.
it did mean no. It's true, and you just have to get up the next weekend or whenever, and just keep plodding along.
Yeah,
Do you have a larger plan ahead for your YouTube? Do you see things being different in the future? I mean, do you imagine sort of releasing all sorts of products and merchandise and those kind of
yeah.
things and branching off?
I've tried multiple things with the whole YouTube space. Like I've got hoodies that you can buy on my
Yeah, yeah.
website. Links in the description down
Trust the
below.
process.
Yeah, but there's so many things that you can do. I do. My main goal really is to get to a point where it's full time, to the point where my
Yeah.
day is solely just content creation. There's been a year where I've done very, very well with it, to the point where it does more than my full-time job, but that's not the point. And I can't, for me, I can't put the full-time job down yet. and I wouldn't for a long time, because I want to make sure that, I want YouTube to be 3x, 4x times, the wage that I make on a full time basis. But long term, yeah, I think content creation, I want I want it so much. Uh, my sister in law asked me recently. She said to me, "I just don't know where you find the time to do it." And it goes for all of us in content creation, especially alongside full time jobs as well.
Mm.
Where you find the time to do it, and admiring the dedication. And I was driving back, and when we left, and I said to the missus, I said, I know what word sums it up now if someone asks me like that again, and the word is purpose. And I know that
Mm.
sounds so deep, that that sounds very, you know it sounds way more than you just make some YouTube videos and you put it on the internet. But for me personally, content creation and making YouTube videos has gone way beyond just the video that you see. I love it. It is my
Mm.
drive. It is genuinely like given me like a creative purpose, more of a business purpose as well. Creating a business along with it, and bringing that business mindset alongside the content creation. And for me, genuinely, it's purpose. Like, it's all I think
Mm.
about all day, every day, and that's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing. I mean, to what level do you think it sort of becomes part of you and what you do?
I think initially, for the first few years, I was a teacher, and the YouTube was an aside. It was just an extra thing. And then I've always wanted to just be an artist in my own right, not necessarily teaching it, just to produce my own art and launch that as a thing. And I think it's taken, and not that I've given up on that, but it's morphed and changed, and I've embraced more and more my role as an educator in the space and as somebody who helps and encourages people. And I think that that's been something I've evolved into. It wasn't a mission initially. It wasn't something that I set out from the outset to do. It might appear like that was the case, but it wasn't really. Um, Maybe it's just the way I approach life generally, but it has just evolved into this role that I've now got, and I love it and I enjoy it. I don't have as perhaps much ambition to change the format or to take on extra things. I think I just want to make what I do continue going and evolving in terms of the content. I'm quite happy for the format to stay the same for the next 20 years if YouTube is still allowing me to do it and there's still an audience. I don't want to get to the point where I'm just treading water and repeating myself and not giving any extra depth. And I guess that's a challenge as a YouTuber. How do you keep reinventing yourself as a content creator? Because if you just keep churning out the same thing again and again, somebody will stick with you for 6 months or less, 6 videos perhaps, and then they think, well, I've seen what you do,
Yeah,
um, and why do I need to keep tuning in for the next lesson or next piece of content? And my goal is to keep learning with the audience really. And when I am creating content, I'm learning new techniques. I'm learning how to add extra detail and more realism, and forever trying to refine it into a process that is still easy to follow for a relative beginner. And I think that's still a challenge that I've got ahead of me. I don't think I've cracked that at all. I think there's all sorts of when I go on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, I see artworks now that are amazing, and I know that if I could just sit down with me in the canvas, it's like, okay, I could figure out how to create that. But I want to be able to teach it. I want to distill it down into a format that is, consumable, is digestible to the average enthusiast and somebody who isn't necessarily at a professional level yet, or hasn't had the luxury of time to really invest that much into it, but has an enthusiasm and would love to create that kind of imagery. Um, so yeah, trying to distill it down to people that are enthusiasts so that they can have a piece of that, joy of just creating something that they look at and can show people and can really wow people with what they've created, and just, I say it in my videos, the intro, and really amaze themselves with what they've done. I love it. I have memories in the past where I've created things and I think, wow, I can't believe I've even done that. And that's the magic for me. I really want to be able to give people that leg up, that feeling of like, wow, I've done something I'm really happy to show other people. And so that's my plan in the future, is just to make sure that I can find new and better ways to facilitate that process for my audience. But yeah, I'm
I,
not. I do think about merchandise, and I do think about other formats and other ways of doing it. And I just, yeah, I tend to not get beyond that thought. But I
but you're
admire
in
people when
such
people
a
do.
you're in such an amazing position though, where the job itself has bought you time, and time is so valuable, especially with little
Yeah,
ones as well, like
yeah,
family.
yeah,
The fact that, don't get me wrong, I imagine there's other days that you do the work, but to kind of, keep it simple, like you said,
yeah.
to just record on a Sunday, upload on a Sunday,
Hmm.
and that's your single video. That's a luxury, and to work.
Yeah,
It's not just
definitely.
one day, but to keep it simple
No,
in this example, to work
yeah,
the one day a week, that's all the reward you need. And
yeah,
I think the differences in us, I think is really fascinating, and simply because I think I'm at a different point where I'm trying to get to essentially, like, let's look at our subscribers, for example. I'm trying to get to the tier that you're in, the bigger numbers, and that's just simply because I want to work hard enough to get there, and
yeah,
I'm happy to do the work and keep putting it in. But ultimately, the luck you the fact that if you get to that point, you can then say no, because I'm not working now full time alongside it. You can just leave those days and take
hmm
care of yourself, and whether it's you go to the gym or something like that, or good long days with the dogs or something like that. Those luxuries are the things that come as a reward of all that hard work,
yeah.
the turning up weekly, the drive to keep going, and along those
And
lines. And that,
for me, it's not. I do waste some time, but the goal has always been to free myself up to do my own art for my own enjoyment, and
yeah.
that's where I've just in the last few months managed to organize things so I'm able to get back into what it is that I love for me and not for anybody else. It's not for an audience. I may sell work in the future, but it's just work. It's just creating a space in my life where I can do the teaching, and it gives me the luxury of a bit of time to just do my own artwork as well as the other things I need to do as well. But it's been so important for me as a creator to know that I have a little bit of spare time for my creative pursuits, and I'm not just endlessly giving it away to an
Mm.
audience. And I know that's a luxury, and I know that I'm incredibly privileged uh, in being able to do just that. But I do so value the little bit of extra time that I've got now, where I can just create my own thing and really learn as an artist. And I think that I'm able to bring a fresh pair of eyes to the tutorials because I've been able to go and feel kind of revived and refreshed a little bit from having done my own work, and feel like I'm on the cutting edge of what I can do as an artist, and then bring some of that vitality and enthusiasm back to the tutorials as well. So I, that is what ultimately I want to be able to continue doing. I want to create my own work and I want to teach. And it's juggling those two. And I feel like I've just got to the point where I can do those things as well as make sure I'm existing as a dad, because that
Yeah,
does
for
take up
sure.
a lot of my time too.
Yeah, definitely. It's a wonderful position. It's a wonderful position. I want to kind of wrap up with maybe just like some
Mm,
bullet points, really, because we've covered a lot of topics, and I think we want to. I hope people have found this maybe encouraging, inspiring, or motivating more than anything. I listen to a lot of podcasts that talk about YouTube, and they get me so motivated to make content. So I hope maybe something has clicked, maybe for somebody watching
mm.
this. But there are a few things that we discussed which maybe need to be countered a little bit. You don't need to make a lot of content for YouTube.
No.
If you have a really very strict day job, for example, and you do this as a hobby in your spare time, do not overload yourself. If it's something, say you release a video on a Friday and you record it on the Monday, you've got the luxury of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to edit that, take your time with it, and you also free up days that if you can't do the Monday, you can record it on the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. You can do a James and upload it 10 minutes before it's meant to go live, and then
I'm
it's
not
straight
I'm
up.
not quite, but yeah, yeah.
But
Sometimes it can be.
definitely take it easy on yourself. Don't overload
Yeah.
yourself. I've spoke about the fact that I do a lot of content. That's just simply because I've been doing it long enough now. I understand the processes involved and the shortcuts that I can take at certain points, like with editing, that can speed up those processes and I can move on to the next
Mm.
project. If you're just starting and it's alongside a lot of other commitments, take your time with it. Set yourself a routine that is either weekly, maybe even bi-weekly. I'd urge you to
Mm.
do weekly. That tends to be the best. But don't set too many standards on yourself. You don't need to run out and buy equipment. You don't need to run out and buy cameras or anything like that, depending
No,
on the type of shots you make. Or maybe all you need is a little something like this, just a tiny little tripod stand with a phone
sure.
mount at the top, and it just very tiny one with some little fold out legs. That's all you
That's
need.
what I
A
use. This
spring,
is what I
a
use.
spring loaded arm.
That's it.
Exactly. A spring loaded arm, something like that. You can get on Amazon for very cheap.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so you can get simple lights, but if you can use a window, even better. It can be as simple as you want to make it. And truthfully, if you're starting to be rewarded with views and you're using the bare basics essentially to make that video, it's even more rewarding because you're getting
Mm.
so much out of what you have already in your house. So,
Definitely.
you don't need to run out and buy equipment or even computers or anything else to edit it on. Do it on your phone if you can, and you can manage it. And over time, maybe you'll splash on those luxuries that just make your life a little bit easier, maybe even quicker potentially.
I don't know about you. I mean, and there's always instances where people have the most expensive and grandiose kind of art kits. People that have all the best brushes and paints and have all these, and it doesn't give you a shortcut to quality. I think you need to aim for quality and offer something to the viewer that is of value. And your equipment, people will get past. Even your sound quality and your picture quality, people will get past. I think if your content gives something and it gives real quality for what you're saying or what you're showing, then people will gravitate towards it, regardless of how low budget your equipment is, I think.
And there's a niche for everything, guys. If you
Yeah.
think, yeah, I want to make a channel, and I know we spoke a lot about sort of content creation in terms of digital art and Procreate, there is a niche for everything. I
Mm.
stumbled across a video on my home screen the other day, and it was a guy I'd never seen before, and he was trying to solve a Sudoku with one number on the grid, and that was it, and a bunch of other rules that went in there. And I was like, wow. I went to his channel, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, a massive Patreon, and you're just like, there are worlds you just don't really know that exist, but there is a niche for everyone, and if you stick to
There
your
is.
niche or it's a specific type of thing, people will come to your channel. They will
Mhm.
find you. That's what all these beautiful home screens are now, and algorithms that will find people of interest that make content in your niche that you like, and or likewise put your content in front of people that like your niche. Just
Yeah.
keep at it, and it will get put in front of people, and you'll build a community. Community is also key as well, making
Definitely.
sure those people that turn up week in week out, the people that leave comments, you need to
Yeah.
be in them comments replying to people.
It's
That's the
true.
best thing,
It's
replying to people's
courtesy.
comments.
It's politeness. It's courtesy. You know.
Exactly. And they've spent the time to comment on your video as well, enough that they've enjoyed it. The least you can
Yeah.
do is respond, like it, and so on. So community is also key. There are a lot of other factors that do go into content creation, and there's a number of other podcasts, one of which is the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. If you want to listen to a weekly show based on YouTube and you're thinking about doing it, that is a fantastic show. I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. I was actually even on that show at one point, and it's amazing because I actually listened to it. And they talk to loads of different people from different niches on YouTube and how they go about it, build a business from it, and so on. There's multiple different things that go into it, but dedication, turning up on time all the time, being
Yeah.
rigorous with a routine if you can be, and like I think you touched on it perfectly and summed it up. Just provide value. If you're providing value, your
Yes.
video's interesting, it's of maybe of educational purposes or it's just for entertainment purposes.
Mhm.
Really understand what it is you make, whether it's entertainment or education, and really focus in on that a little bit and try and give as
Yeah.
much as you can. And also remember, people in your niche, and I'm guilty of it sometimes, they can't remember the basics necessarily, or they're so new that they don't know the basics. Cover the basics in your niche as well.
Mm.
My most popular video on YouTube is how to copy and paste in Procreate. I've put time into videos for hours
Yeah.
and hours, but that's my most popular video. Do that for your niche as well if you're listening and you're in a
Yeah.
different one. cover those basics, baby. They're the ones. So
Yeah,
James,
definitely.
this has definitely been a conversation for us. I think we're at an hour and 10, and I definitely think we could
I
have gone on
know.
for another hour, but we'll wrap it because we'll save some more stuff for another episode. But
Yeah.
guys, thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode of this Sketch Age. We hope you found this motivating and hopefully interesting as well. James, thank you as always for a fantastic
Thank you.
conversation. Guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes, and links to all our socials will be in the description down below. I need to go to bed. I'll see you later.